Dravit moi druzy. Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to help you understand things and make sense of what's going on with the war in Ukraine. In the last few days, I spent some time talking about things like Scott Ritter, for example. And when I was talking about Scott Ritter, I was talking about like who he is, and some people took me to task for not bringing out all of his background, and particularly the sex offender charges. And I did that intentionally. And the reason I did that is because if I said that right up front in his background, which is like, for example, we looked at the Wikipedia page and it was right there in the first paragraph with his other background as a Marine and a weapons inspector. And I skipped that because if I had said that right away, um, nothing else I would have said would have made any difference to anybody who is already biased against Scott Ritter. Anybody who is for Scott Ritter would have also turned off immediately because my thinking was I'm trying to deal with his thinking and why he thinks the way he thinks. It's not trying to destroy the person. I'm trying to understand the person. But along the way, I found some really interesting things that happened. So people would attack me then for one of two reasons. Either I was too light on him, which I'm not. I'm not excusing his charges, and I'm not like I wouldn't like let him babysit my daughters, right? Uh, but I'm also at the same time not trying to use that to destroy everything else. I want to destroy arguments, not the individual. I'm not trying to attack the person. I'm trying to attack the arguments. And this is the point of my thesis today, which is to talk about facts as opposed to the narrative, because somebody went and attacked me. They went back and Google searched me, and I'm pretty easy to Google search and found, hey, he works at this school, and this school is a Baptist school. That's correct. I'm a conservative guy. I work at a Baptist school, and he probably wants to work at the Ivies, and he's just not good enough to get in. And I'm thinking, okay, there's a fact and another fact: the name of the school and the school's affiliation. But beyond that, it was all speculation. And it made a coherent narrative. But the coherent narrative was very wrong. Now, there are many reasons that I might not work at one of these other schools. One, maybe I can't get in. I'm not good enough. Or maybe I don't want to live there. Maybe it's academically hostile to the way that I see the world. Maybe there's all sorts of reasons, quality of life and other things, that would cause me not to do this. But this person created a narrative based on just a couple of facts that seem coherent in order to make his case. Now, what I want to help you understand is that the facts and the narrative aren't always the same. In this video here, I talked about identifying legitimate sources of information, and that was based on the ISW. The ISW does a great job with this. One of the things that the ISW says is that they don't simply report facts, but rather interpret available data to form assessments regarding what is occurring. That's the narrative. So they work on that, but they have to work within a certain framework. And then they also explicitly state the confidence level whenever applicable and encourages readers to include it when reporting our assessments in order to minimize risk of a misinterpretation. That's also very good. There's a difference between the fact and the narrative. In this video here, I was talking about what if Maria Zakharova worked for you, and I looked at what Maria Zakharova has said, and then we also went to ChatGPT and had ChatGPT read Maria Zakharova's statements and said, okay, this is what happened. Now, these are the facts. Now, create an interpretation based upon that. And what Maria Zakharova does in all her work is weave a narrative that supports the Kremlin line based on the facts. And so you have to understand there's a significant difference between facts and narrative. Just a few days ago, as you are well aware, there was a drone strike over the Kremlin. And the drone strike, we still don't know exactly who it was. And I'm unwilling to say it was this group or that group because I simply don't know. I know the facts. I know that the facts are that the drone flew over and exploded. Something happened to make it disintegrate. We know that. But the Kremlin narrative is that it was an attack on Putin, which is absurd on its face, but that's the narrative, and they're going to push that. So we have to understand the difference between fact and narrative. Another example. Um, eh, Hitler, as you well know, killed 6 million Jews. Well, not personally, obviously, but through his system, through his orders, through the Nazi regime. They killed 6 million Jews. Hitler was also a vegetarian. His doctors put him on a meat-free diet. Now, he wasn't always a vegetarian. Okay, but he became one, and he had a public image as a vegetarian, and in 1942, he self-identified as a vegetarian. Hitler was a vegetarian, fact. But he, if you weave a narrative about Hitler based on just a couple of data points of information, oh, he was a vegetarian and he killed 6 million Jews. Can you see how absurd the connection can be? And if you just put a cloak on those bones, it just doesn't, it can lead you into all kinds of issues. So I want you to understand that you have to be very careful with that. Now, I understand the media bias, right? I mean, I can look at this and mainstream media, people would talk about this all the time. Here's Pew Research Center, and that's a very reputable organization, and Americans consider to be mainstream news: ABC, CNN, New York Times, MSNBC, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, New York Post, and then it precipitously drops off after that. Okay, and there's bias. We all know that there's bias. We talk about bias. Here's major like center organizations, including the BBC and NPR and Reuters. And so there's a reason that we pick the organizations that we pick when we were trying to unpack things. But and here in this particular video is why Republicans repeat Russian conspiracies. I delve way into that. Now, I think it's mostly going to be, and when I was talking about this, it was in the Ritter video. And so the Ritter video, Ritter tends to appeal to Republicans who are already opposed to the mainstream media narrative. Whatever that is, they're looking for the opposite because they're so used to the mainstream media being hostile toward them. As a conservative, I understand that. But what's the alternative? At least with the mainstream media, even if the narrative is a little off, the facts are embedded in what's going on, as opposed to RT. So there's journalistic standards in the mainstream media, so you can still find facts, is what I'm saying. In RT, you're not even necessarily finding facts. And by the way, if you want to know about Scott Ritter, and I said this in the video the other day, but if you look up Scott Ritter and you put him into RT in the search bar, what you'll find is that more than 300 results show up, and that's probably a sign that it's kind of taking the Russian position on things. So you want to be aware of how all this works. Now, I hope you understand that my meandering argument that facts are one thing, but narrative is different. Now, you can even have different facts. Like he will talk about the facts of 7-to-1 casualties in Ukraine, meaning 7 Ukrainians for every 1 Russian. And that's a wrong fact. And that was a part of the doctored leaked papers that were the leaked Pentagon papers that were doctored. And that's where he came up with that ratio. But then you can challenge the difference in the facts, and you should challenge the difference in those facts. Where have somebody on the other side prove the difference in those claimed facts. Okay, I hope that helps you understand how you should be dealing with the media and thinking through media as you're trying to identify legitimate sources of information. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.